Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for Lifetime's webinar for adoptive parents. My name is Kim King, and we are co-hosting with Libby Deniston and with our special guest, Lifetime's founder, Mardie Caldwell. Just want to share a few details before we get into our conversation this evening. If you are very new to Lifetime and are just starting to get to know us, I encourage you to fill out our free application online. It's a streamlined application, very user-friendly. It is found at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. So just go to lifetimeadoption.com. You should be able to find the application pretty easily, or you can type in lifetimeadoption.com/apply. It will take you right to the application. And we also invite you to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/open.adoption. There are always great conversations, encouragement, and support there in our Facebook page, and we love seeing you all there, and we enjoy our conversations with adoptive parents who are currently in the process and the past adoptive parents who come alongside and cheer you on if you're still in the adoption process, as well as birth parents who chime in as well. So you can always reach us one-on-one by phone, 1-800-923-6784. When you have questions or updates to your plans, aren't sure about things, need some clarification, call us, email us, and let us know how we can help you. That number is 1-800-923-6784, or email adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. That's adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. And we're happy to help you in any way we can, or at least point you in the right direction. Of course, if you already have a coordinator, you should be able to call her or email her. But if you're not sure who your coordinator is, or you don't have one yet, we'll get you connected with someone who can help you. And with that, Libby, thank you for setting up tonight's webinar.
Oh, I'm excited for tonight's webinar. It's been a little while since we've heard from our guest, Mardie Caldwell, and I know that she's always a crowd pleaser, mostly because she speaks from the heart, but she also has a lot of wisdom from her professional experience as well as her personal story to offer. So tonight, we titled tonight's webinar, Embracing Adoption After Infertility, and we really were inspired by a couple emails that we received from some families actually currently waiting to adopt, who asked us if we could speak to the reality that is, even when you're excited to adopt, many people who have walked through a path of fertility issues or miscarriage or difficult pregnancies, even though you're excited to adopt and you're moving toward your child every day, sometimes questions, sometimes issues, sometimes thoughts still come up. Sometimes those questions from families still get fired at you and you think, oh my gosh, I've been waiting to adopt for a year and they're still asking me when I'm going to get pregnant. You know, so we know that there's a lot that circulates with people who are already in the process, but certainly when you are moving through infertility right now in the moment, if this is part of your story that's happening right now, a big question we also get is, when should I move from infertility to adoption? When is the right time? How do I process that transition? And so Mardie is here tonight to really speak to a lot of the things that we hear. And we really want to encourage your participation. So you can use that questions or chat box on your screen, and we will try and include as many of your questions or comments this evening as we can. And we really want to make this personal and validating, but also encouraging, and hopefully after tonight's webinar you will just maybe feel refreshed or comforted in some way, or motivated to keep making strides towards the child you long to add to your family. So with that, Mardie, we're so grateful you're here tonight. Thank you for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I enjoy seeing so many people that are attending too. And you know, the nice thing too is that I've been where most of the attendees have been before, and we've addressed this a number of times for families in the past that have gone on to adopt, but there is a part of us that as infertility patients or, you know, had infertility issues still address for a lifetime. And it's something that, oh, you got some great pictures of me. Wow, that's a long time ago. You know, lose my train of thought here. Anyway.
Great hair.
I think yeah, great hair. That was the style back then. But I think people really need to know that there's help out there and that they're not alone. I think that's a big part of it, is that we tend to be isolated when we're going through the infertility or the adoption, and really that fine line of when do we pass over and say, I'm ready now to be a parent. And this is real interesting. I meet people probably every week that will speak to me about adoption, and they'll say, we just really never got to a point that we wanted to go on and adopt. We wanted to, and then things happened, and we got busy, and then we moved, and we got promoted, and something happened with the car, or my mother-in-law moved in, and before they know it, they're in their late 50s, and they haven't looked at anything. And it just breaks my heart because life happens if we don't in the moment, and that time to say, what's important right now if you really want to be a parent. And I encourage people not to wait too long to really decide that factor and to move quickly into that if they possibly can. And one way they can do that is by going through the grieving part. Grief is a process. It's not like a light switch. You can't just turn it on and off. And giving an example, I've lost 7 pregnancies. In background for people that may not know that, lost 7 pregnancies. I've adopted. I have a miracle child also with lots of infertility. And there are still times when I still grieve. And so I'll come right out and tell you at the very beginning. I've got friends that say that they're completely, they completely feel like they're over their infertility, and I feel I am to a point, but there's times when I remember the pregnancy losses, and I'll think of how old my child would have been today, and that I could have been a great-grandmother. I'm a grandmother now. But those are things that you do tend to bring up. And then the other thing I find, too, is that people will actually, it's very natural, and it's important that I share this, that it's very natural to grieve a child you never did conceive. People don't think about that, and they feel guilty. They feel bad if they do, and they don't know how to bring that up to anybody else that comes on, and you don't know where it's going to happen. Sometimes it can be a baby shower, or it can be a friend that tells you they're pregnant, or complains that they're pregnant. You just want to smack up the side of their head, and it's just you just don't know when it may be triggered. And it's not always bad. Sometimes it only passes for a few moments. And I just have to keep reminding myself and my faith is that God brought me through a process, and that I have the children I have, and I don't have the children I have for a reason, and that there's a bigger picture. And I have to keep encouraging people, too, to keep expecting something good is going to happen. I really believe that what we focus on comes to be. And, you want to be positive about your adoption process if that's where you're going right now. But I know a lot of people on the call are still trying to decide whether they want to go from infertility testing into adoption. And what we did, and I've shared this before, is I did some infertility, then I did adoption, and then I did infertility after that. And it was my last hurrah, and I just wanted to be able to do that. And we tell families that, we don't want to be the ones that tell you that if you're going to be adopting, then you can't try to get pregnant. And then there's other families that we talk to, and they can't they determine the cause of their infertility. And so they struggle with that also. And it's not a blame game, because in our situation, it was equally a problem for both of us, and that can be really hard. And I have a lot to share about that on the relationships and things like that, going through infertility and adoption. It can be very stressful. And but that can be another webinar we can do, to talk about that. But worrying really weighs us down. And when we worry about, one thing I tell a lot of people too is that you don't look too far out in the distance, because we can't control the future. We can't change the past, and all you can do is focus on today only. And by focusing on today, you can live in the present, decide, is this what I really want to do? Am I ready to do this? And you don't want to see adoption as second best. You don't want that to come across to a birth mother. And I write about a story in my book, adoptingonline.com, and it's been written in the books about, a family that I helped, that had come to me to help them adopt. And when they met the birth mom and saw her tummy, that they decided they couldn't do this, and that she really wanted to continue her infertility, but it was devastating to the birth mother. And so, of course, we like you to be sure that you're ready to adopt and that you're not looking at this as second best. That adoption is extremely important, and you're taking in your hands and your life the life of not only a child but also a very tender-hearted birth mother that is trusting you with, her child.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be really hard. And the other thing I hear people saying too is that, and they've asked me before, do you feel less of a mom because you know the history of your child?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really interesting question, because I recently found my birth mom. This is, I just talked about this. I've not talked to anybody else about this. I think maybe Heather. Found her on Facebook, and she had remarried. And my son was over, and I showed him the photograph, and he said, Mom, he said, all I want is my medical records. He says, you're my mom, I love you, and that's all I really want. Just ask for my medical records if you do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really hard, because Suri's listening to me, sorry. Anyway, so that was really difficult for me too, because I didn't know if I wanted to share that, but I thought it was important. And it was hard for me because I loved his birth mom very much, and I wanted to continue having a relationship with her. But there was only one time that I really questioned my son, and I guess I didn't really question him, but he felt that question was when he was about 15 years old, and I was in the laundry room, and he'd come in, and I'm 5'3", and he's 6'2", and so it was cute, because I had asked him, do you want to get a hold of your birth mom? And he must have sensed on there, because I'd asked him before. He put his arm around me, and he says, Mom, you're my mom, and you'll always be my mom, and you'll always be my mom, and I love you very much, and I really don't feel like I'm going to have contact with my birth mother. To him, I was his mother, and I had raised him, I had loved him, I had been there during the boo-boos and everything else, and so I share that because there are times when, at the very beginning of our adoption, that I felt like, maybe I was living with that shadow of a birth mother on. I wonder how she judged me on this, on my parenting, on my discipline, on the school I selected for him, on the medical care, that type of thing. But I got to a point that I had to realize that I am his mother, and I'm doing the best I can, and the choices he has, and also your feedback from your children too, saying, I am so glad, Mom, that you sent me to private schools, that you had the tutoring, you had the things that you gave me, you sacrificed for me. And I have to come with my own peace that I did everything I could. But I think what happens is every person that's going from infertility into adoption needs to think about this. And journaling helps a lot. I did a lot of journaling. And don't be afraid to speak to a counselor that possibly is geared to and educated in adoption, where they can actually help you and pose some questions for you to really ponder. That's going to be really important too. And don't settle in the feeling of not being good enough, or why me? Don't settle in that feeling of feeling less, or
well, and Mardie, I'm glad you're speaking to that. You really sort of touched on a lot of things that we could probably even elaborate on, but you kind of got to a point here. We had a really great comment come in that said, especially when you were talking about keep expecting something good is going to happen, and talking about the weight of the worry, even while you're parenting, it sounds like that there's almost this heightened pressure to be extra vigilant, extra responsible, extra good at motherhood, because you have this other mother who's trusted you with this child, but to remember that you're also still a mom, just like other parents, and that adoption doesn't change your responsibility, even though in your heart you feel like there's something extra you need to prove because another person asked you to step in. But I love this comment. I think that you will really be touched by this and have something to add. I struggle with the difference in being positive in my outlook and also being realistic. When I was trying to get pregnant, I tried so hard not to get my hopes up so that I wouldn't be let down. But I see myself doing the same thing with adoption. I don't want to get my hopes up in case something doesn't work out, Can you speak to these feelings?
I can, and I think what happens is you have to go in, and this is where faith in God comes in too, and realize what's going to happen will happen. But also I find that a lot of times if you're constantly focusing on not succeeding, you're having self-fulfilled prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to be positive about that. I had to get to a point, and I totally understand where this listener's coming from too, because I had to want to be positive, but there was always that, when's the next shoe going to drop? And, what's going to happen? And that 2 weeks when you're waiting for your period or whatever it may be, that was really hard. And now it's when you're trying to adopt, it's when I'm going to get the phone call. And I think the main thing you have to do is stay really positive about it. Do everything that you possibly can to cause success in your adoption. And I can't emphasize that enough, because we have families that will start to work with us, but they won't follow through on the steps they need to take for their success.
Mm-hmm.
And they bypass a lot of situations in birth moms that very much would like to speak to them, but they're not available. They're out of town. They don't have their profiles done. So you've got to put into adoption everything you put into your infertility, and then it's the hurry up and wait, which is the hardest part. And you want to wait for the right child that's meant for you, and not trying to, push a square peg into a round hole. And during that period of time, do something positive each day, and just remember, I am in a season of life right now. When you're tempted to give up, it just means that you're getting closer or ready for a great breakthrough. Closer, something good is about to happen, and you can't give up. You've got to stay positive, and that means every morning waking up and saying to yourself, if you have to look in the mirror and say, today's going to be a great day, and I'm getting closer to being a parent. You almost have to fake it till you make it. And I found that, and I've seen this with families before and even with myself, sometimes you have a very difficult time right before that breakthrough, before you get that phone call, or before you start getting some interest in your profile. You've got to stay positive. It's not always going to be this painful, or this too shall pass. That's important to remember too. But moving into that, and I hope I'm answering that question too. But being positive, and that other part is, don't verbalize that negativity coming through. You can think about it, but don't bring it out of your mouth. Don't be talking to it. Don't be whining to people about it. Stay positive. And it has made a huge difference in my adoption. It made a huge difference in my parenting, and also in our career as an adoption professional. You can't let the negativity get past your lips. You've got to stay positive. Know that God has a perfect plan for you and has a child for you. And then once you do have that child, you'll be so thankful that you waited, and that's the right time. But do your part, and don't put that off, because that's where people fail. They get frustrated and they think, I don't feel like doing this, or I've got something more important right now. And before they know it, time is passing and ticking away, and they're missing out on wonderful opportunities. Does that kind of help a little bit, you think?
I think so. We actually had a couple people chime in saying that that person is not alone. I felt like that, and also that's really helped me to just every day wake up and say, I'm one day closer to my baby. That was beautiful, and I love that the audience can share these comments, because like you started out tonight saying, sometimes you feel so isolated and so alone, but you're not alone. There's even a community here right now of people who know either where you are, or they've been where you are, or they're going there right now. And it's so neat just to, I think, even just have people feel validated. Oh my gosh, that's normal. Okay, I'm not crazy for thinking that, but then being productive with where to go from there.
And I spent an hour every day during my adoption process focusing on my adoption. Every day for an hour I spent on it, just like you would with anything else. If you're going to go make dinner and you spend an hour making your dinner or whatever it may be, I focused every day on my adoption. And then a lot of times I would just say, after an hour, I'd let it go. Or if I was on a real roll, I'd maybe do an hour and a half. But I never put in less than an hour a day focusing on it, because then I could sit back and say, I feel like I've done my part. I've done something to move me closer to being a mother today. And I had myself, we had a support group we had put together ourselves, But I had a friend of mine that we spoke on the phone every single day, and she was trying to adopt, and we supported each other. What have you done today? What have you done? I'm going to do this. Would you like to come and do this with me too? And we shared tips, and we shared birth mothers. We shared adoption professionals, and information that really helped each other. But I didn't want to feel like I was all by myself and isolated, because that's when you get depressed. And just remember too, your greatest test comes when you are tired, hungry, or overworked.
So true.
So your greatest test comes when you're tired, hungry, or overworked. And if anybody's facing that right now, that's when you want to take that time to really take a break and do some personal time. Do something you like. Get outdoors. I know it's cold right now in some areas. Bundle up. But do something that you've enjoyed doing in the past, and maybe put it to a side for a day or two. Not longer than that, but just get something where you can get rejuvenated. I heard something the other day that if you start your day off every day singing, it really is hard to have a bad day. Start your day off just singing in the morning, whether it's praise music or you put your favorite music on and sing along. I don't care if you can't carry a tune. No one's going to hear you. But once you do that, it really helps. I've been starting to do that in the morning, just singing along. For me, I put praise music on, or some of my, maybe it's a country western song, and just sing along with it. It really helps my day start out better. And try that too. So we don't want to focus again on the negative or what's not happening. We want to focus on what's the possibility and what is good happening. We're living in a country right now where we can't adopt. There are many countries where you cannot adopt. It's not allowable. It's completely unavailable to people. And we have this opportunity before us, and there's lots of options we have.
Yes, actually we get lots of calls from Canadian adoptive parents living in Canada wanting to know how they can adopt a baby from the U.S. because apparently the way the system is set up, it's just really hard to navigate, or they're just not available. The adoptions are just not available over there. So we are very blessed that we have a country here that is, for the most part, very nicely structured to adopt when a birth mom is willing to place that baby with you. And lots of adoption professionals that can help walk you through that, people who really have a heart to help you, such as here at Lifetime.
Exactly. And I think today is just tell yourself, too, today I can handle today. You don't have to focus so often. We focus on the future, and that's really hard, too. Or we focus on the past. We have regrets because we couldn't get pregnant, and then we try to find the blame game. Well, it must have been because of this reason or this reason that this happened. And you can't change the past. And so, you've got to leave that behind and say, where am I going now and what's my goal? And moving from infertility into adoption doesn't have to be a month-long project. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Sometimes for some people it takes a little bit longer. But I found by journaling really helps quite a bit. And taking the time to actually, I tell some families you have to mourn it. I had to cry. I remember going to a baby shower, and I was feeling really not very good about being at the baby shower, and everyone was happy. I still don't like baby showers to this day, so just everyone know about that. I still don't enjoy going to them. But I went in the bathroom and just cried my eyes out. And I thought, what are you doing with this? This is crazy. And I wanted to be happy for her, and I was happy for her, but I was really longing to be a mother. And it was very difficult for me to see people friends after friends and relatives that were getting pregnant or adopting. And even when we were adopting, we would have our profiles shown, and we were second chosen, number 2, all the time. Oh, they loved you, but they liked this other family more. And it's like, what's wrong with this? Why can't we get chosen? And then every month I'd feel I'm getting older. Maybe I'm too old. You saw in the photographs I was heavier back then. I had birth mom say, you're too heavy. You don't look like you're healthy. You're the wrong, live in the wrong area. I don't want somebody from California. I want someone from Texas. There are reasons, and for me back then, I wish I had more of the support that we have today, because I had to realize that God was holding this one child for me. And it was a difficult one. I mean, his birth mother wanted him back. I had a very difficult adoption. But in the very end, she decided that this is the best thing for her son, which became our son. And it worked out beautifully. And if it hadn't been for that adoption, I wouldn't be doing the adoption work we're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
So I
And I
really
was
believe
going to
that,
bring that up too, Marty. Sorry to stop you there, but we have this beautiful slide up of you with just a few of the adoptive parents and the babies that you've helped bring together over the years. But when you were talking about, when your greatest test comes and what you can do to refresh, I was thinking, well, sometimes helping other people gets you out of your zone enough to just sort of refresh, even rest from just all the thoughts that go through your head. And I think it's amazing when you reflect on the journey you went through, which was there were years where you were helping other people become parents and build their families while you were still waiting to become a mom for the first time.
yeah, it was
That
it was it was it was something that I knew that if it was like I was saying to myself, if they're getting chosen, then I'm going to be up there soon.
mhm,
And I think I realized when we were first starting our organization, we had support group. That's how we started, and we'd go over to have our meetings, and we'd have people that would come in, and they adopted parents that wanted to adopt to be, and they would come over and help us put stamps on the postcards and everything like that. But I found the people that were giving back and helping, they were the ones that were getting chosen by adoption. And it wasn't through me. It was like the law of reciprocity. They were giving and they were getting back. They weren't being selfish and sitting back and saying, woe is me. Why isn't it me right now? But they're actually helping and giving back in other areas. And there's lots of areas you can give to. And I want to encourage people, if you're in California, we always can use volunteers, but we have families that actually donate to our Birth Mom Fund. And they donate by buying things on Amazon and sending in stocks for birth mothers or sheets and things like that. And these may not even be their birth moms, but they're giving back. Or volunteering in their areas, doing something at their church or with a nursery or something like that. And that's another area, too. I found that when I worked in the nurseries, I just kept feeling like I was helping these other people, and that someday I'm going to have a child just like that, and I got my baby fixed. Not everyone is going to feel the same way, and it's
mhm,
okay.
mhm,
Some people say, I can't even walk past the nursery. It's too painful for me, and that's okay. Just accept where you are, and just remember, this too shall pass, and you're in a season in your life right now. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you weird. It just means that this is where you are at this time. Once you accept where you are, then you can move forward to the next phase. My thing that I'd like to drive home tonight is that you have to be yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself on what's holding you back, what is your feeling, and what you truly want out of life. You truly want to adopt. And I have families that will go through this whole process, and at the very end they'll say, you know what, I don't think I've ever wanted to adopt. I just think that I wanted a biological child, and I don't think I want to adopt, so we're going to stay childless. But I was like, great, as long as you understand that and you have a peace about that, it's better you do that now than get a birth mom involved and spend lots of money and find out that you really didn't want to have a child after all. Does that make sense?
mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
And Marty, earlier you said, we could have a whole webinar on the marriage topic and how adoption relates in your marriage and how to keep marriages strong through this walk, this season in life. Can you just share maybe a tip or two as far as women or husbands who the spouse just isn't right where they are, or maybe hasn't really been as involved in the adoption planning? What can a spouse do to prepare for adoption or keep moving forward? What, if anything, can they do when their spouse isn't quite there yet?
And I've seen this a lot. It's a very good question.
Without being a nag, of course.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think what happens is you've got to, this is where faith comes in too. You've got to be able to have some grace with each other. And I think that I really do believe in counseling. Even counselors have to go to counselors and stay tapped. And I think by identifying that, identifying what is the reason that they're not, because if you start adoption and if, let's say, one spouse says, all right, already, I'm going to sign up, whatever you want, just get off my back, that's not going to work. And they'll cause more problems in the end than anything else. And it could be, a real challenge in a marriage. you want to find out what is the challenge. And they have a right to be where they are in their season of their life too. And maybe it might be something very, very small that they're still trying to figure out, their own infertility, or what did I do wrong, or I want to please my wife and I can't do this. There might be a lot of different reasons that they're feeling that way, but they may not know how to get them out and talk about that, and that's why I say have grace with each other and not trying to do the blame game. But I encourage people to get in and get marriage counseling. I've done it myself. I think it's very good for people. We all need seasons. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. But if one of you is not willing to go forward in adoption and the other one really wants to go forward, there's some reason there that's going on. And if you can't talk it out yourself, if your communication is breaking down, then speaking to somebody else, and I suggest you go to a licensed family counselor, not just your pastor, because they're really not trained. Most of them are not trained. 99% of them are not trained to deal with that. And speak it out and get closer in your marriage, because it's going to be tough. Infertility is tough because it's intimacy on demand, and adoption, you've got to really be able to communicate well. And you've heard me say this before, is that we see the best and the worst of families during adoption, and when when the tough times come, you've got to be able to have that communication too, and not bow out. And so you really want to have as strong a marriage as possible. And a lot of times that's giving more than your spouse is giving right now. And you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm already giving so much. How can I give any more? And I wish they would do this, and I wish they'd do that. But sometimes we have to give a little bit more, and it may be 110%, and give some grace to the other spouse that's not ready to do this right now, and realize that there's some things they're working on themselves that you can't force them to want to go through with adoption at this point. Provide information if they're willing to read about that, 10 webinars, get information that they're comfortable with, that they can read and that communicates with them. But I feel at this point that the families that I've seen go through this struggle have gone through with communication awareness and help with counselors. So I hope that helps in that area there, because you've got to have a strong marriage, and no one's perfect, and no marriage is perfect, but you've got to be able to communicate well, and the best of marriages, people who do reach out and get counseling, even if it's just for a short period of time.
I totally agree. Yeah.
We had a great comment.
And what about
Kim? I was just going to read this one comment that said, "It is so strange. I felt that way for the first year, but then after that, my husband was a totally different person. He now talks about adoption as much as I do. So sometimes it's just a matter of time."
Yeah, it's the seasons, and what happens is men look at things totally different than women, and they want to please their wives. They want to do it well. They're protectors. They're the hunters and gatherers, and there can be a lot of things. No two marriages are the same, and no two people are the same. And you could be close in a lot of areas, but this is a real personal. It's a matter of the heart, and sometimes the more you push someone to move in a direction you want them to move, the further they pull back. And this is when it's good to have a support group yourself. Don't belittle your spouse. Love them, respect them. And some people will say, I can't respect him because he doesn't want to do this, and I feel like my time is running out, and I'm getting older, and he thinks his cars are for his vote's more important. Again, try to get in and get some counseling and find out what it is, because many times I find out it's fear. It's fear of being a parent. It's fear of going from being a single or a carefree guy into being parenthood, and will I be a good dad? And people ask too, well, if I can't biologically have a child, maybe God doesn't want me to have one, so maybe I'm trying to push this and it's not supposed to be. I say hogwash. If you really want to be a parent and you really want to adopt, I believe you move forward in that area, but you've got to have that grace with each other. And date nights are huge. I have families that I've suggested date nights for, and they'll say, we've gone out there, we just looked at each other. I say, great, just look at each other. And then go out and start with something simple, but just get away and do something fun. If you just take a walk, Men sometimes like parallel work. I found too when I talk to my son or something, if I just say, sit down, let's talk, he just twiddle his thumbs, he doesn't want to do anything. But if I say, would you come out and help me do some weeding? We have better conversations when we're doing parallel work together. So men a lot of times like to move their hands together and do things. So I find with my husband, he's in his workshop and I'm doing my work. We have great conversations because he's keeping his hands busy doing his stuff that he wants to do. I'm doing the things I want to do, if it's just even cleaning up in the garage. But I'm not just sitting down and trying to force him to say something. But I find a lot of men are parallel conversation manners are really important.
That is a great tip. Yes, definitely. When you said earlier about, some people feel or wonder or question, is this what God has for me? Or am I forcing myself into parenthood? If I haven't had a baby biologically, maybe I'm not meant to have one at all. And you said hogwash, and I really like that, because we have seen so many people. I mean, there are so many couples out there that adoption never occurs to them. The Lord didn't put that seed in their heart, But these families who are reaching out, exploring adoption, and feeling like, I could love a child through adoption just as much as a biological child. I just want to be a mom. I feel like the Lord has done that for them.
I see that too, and also there's that, I know for me when I adopted, because we had I helped pass a law in California that changed the waiting time down, so birth moms didn't have 6 months to change their mind, and I actually worked on that bill and was the only one asked to speak before the Senate on that. This is really important. People need to realize that if you really want to adopt, you put your heart and soul into it, you will feel good about it, you'll be matched up with a birth mom, and you will love that child. And there's something about getting that quote-unquote pink slip when you know that it's finalized and that child is truly yours. But you want to continue loving that child and releasing love into their life. I heard a thing, I just watched Steve Jobs' movie the other day, and I don't know how many people have watched that at all, and that was very interesting because he had mentioned on there that he was adopted. His birth mom wanted him to go to a specific type of family, and he was adopted by an attorney and his wife, and they returned him a month later, and then another family adopted him, and he didn't have a lot of control, and that was one of the things in his life that he wanted to have control, and that's why he was pushing so hard in his life, because as a child, as this newborn, not having control of where he was going, being ping-ponged around, left this mark on him. And my heart went out to him as an adopted mom, as an adoption professional. I felt really sad for that, and it reminded me that families need to go into this wholehearted into that too, and realize that this child starts bonding with you right away too, that they're going to go in and they're going to know you as mommy and daddy, and they need you to be ready to be mommy and daddy to them too. And spending as much time planning your time off of work so you can spend time with them. I suggest to people, as I did, start reading parenting books. And people say, oh, I can't read them, they're too painful. Get over it and start reading some books, because, again, look at the positive. You're going to be a parent. And at 4 o'clock in the morning when your baby has a fever, you're not going to go pick up the baby book and figure out what's going on or Google it. You're going to want to know right there in your heart of hearts what's happening. And also just about the bonding and what happens with children and touching, holding them. And I've done whole webinars and classes on that before about bonding with your children. And I think that people have to get prepared for that and stay positive. And I'm going to keep saying that because that's a big part of it.
And there's probably someone out there that really needs to hear that, which is why you feel led to keep saying that.
Yeah. Well, because I've been there too, and I know we're getting questions in. So any other questions that come in, or if you have questions to any of the listeners out there, if you have a question, probably 10 other people have the same question you have. And as you're seeing on the screen right now, you're seeing a lot of families that probably were in the same place you are that ended up adopting, and are enjoying that right now. And they probably had a lot of the same feelings you had. But it's best to ask the questions and get some answers from that too. I think you'll feel more at peace about it.
What about when people make comments or ask questions about your status, your family structure status, whether they're asking about pregnancy or adoption, and it's really something you don't have control over. That can be a little awkward, and sometimes it can even be hurtful, even if that's not the other person's intention.
It can be, and especially around the holidays when you get together with relatives and relatives you haven't seen very often, and they'll ask you, are you pregnant? Are you going to have any children? I used to tell the story about New Year's. We would. My grandfather was older, and he would have us all for New Year's to a restaurant. We'd sit at this long table, and there's other families there, and the waitresses and things. He'd yell across the table, "Haven't you guys figured out how to do it yet?" And we knew, it's like I say, "Grandpa, we lost that page in the book, and can you pass the green beans," whatever it may be, because I just didn't want to go through that all again. And I think the thing is that you want to be polite, but also there's a private part of your life, and you don't have to answer every question. You can always say, you know what, that's a very private part of my life, but thank you so much for your concern. It depends on who the person is, if they're truly sincere or they're just nosy. Last night, I gave you an example. We had an event here, I spoke, and I had shared some information about some projects with one gentleman a couple weeks ago. And before I know it, all these people know about it. And I said, man, I can't believe this guy's such a gossip. And it wasn't bad. It just that I couldn't believe that this man shared this other information on. And it's not confidential. It's just that I had spoken about it, and it got all over town. It literally got all over, Chamber of Commerce, and everyone else knew about these things. And I just wasn't ready for everyone to hear about that because I got lots of questions about it. And the same thing happens with families. You share that maybe you're thinking about adoption, and before you know it, people are saying, well, have you adopted yet? What are you doing? Da, 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 da. And they're being a busybody. You can redirect that. You can give the comment that I had just given you. You can share that you're working on it and praying about it, and you really appreciate them praying for you too. And would you love to go over and get some tea with me right now, or or something, and change the subject? Most people understand that. And I think some of the best ways to tell people, this is another question I know that has come in, is when do we share that we're going to move from infertility, no longer doing infertility, into adoption? And it's best if you tell your immediate family first, and then if you're going to share it on social media with other relatives, that's fine. But you don't want your mom getting really upset that you shared it with Aunt Millie first and your brother-in-law before you shared it with her. And so really important that you share that decision with your immediate family before you broadcast it on social media. It's also been my recommendations that you keep, if you've got a blog going about your infertility or about your adoption journey, that you don't share that with your family. And people will say, well, why? And I'll say that there are going to be times, like the holidays, that you may want to vent a little bit about, your relatives on your blog. And you don't want your mother saying, I can't believe you said that on your blog about me. And, sometimes you want to keep that confidential as far as your blog or your confidential support groups that are online, because families and people that have not gone through infertility, have not gone through adoption, don't understand. And even to this day, I still have people that will ask about orphanages, and will ask, do you ever see as real mother? And I say every day when I look in the mirror. So you've got to have comments that come back, but do it with grace too, because a lot of times people are just ignorant about adoption. And that's why I've written the books on adoption too, is to help people. But I think moving from infertility into adoption needs to be done with a lot of thought, and then a lot of vigor, that this is really what you want to do, and put your whole heart and soul into it.
And one of the books that Mardie has written is entitled Called to Adoption, and that has helped so many families. And every year we get comments that people are planning to give it as Christmas gifts. So that's a great idea if you are sharing about your plans to adopt with your circle of friends and family. The book is entitled Called to Adoption, A Christian's Guide to Answering the Call. And it's a real easy read. Families have commented that they were able to get through it within just a few nights sitting down reading it. So it's about less than 100, around 100 pages or so if you include the definitions in the back, which are great to have and for friends and family to have. And so they can understand modern day adoption and have that insight about a little bit about what you're walking through.
Right, and this is co-written with Heather Featherston, our director here too. And it actually, we were real proud. It went to #1 bestseller in adoption books on Amazon, and #6 under parenting books. So we were real excited about that, and it's had a lot of good feedback. Also, the So I Was Thinking About Adoption book is a good book to read to get into the shoes and the mind of birth mothers. I've had families comment that just reading that book, and it only takes about an hour to read, is a book they can give birth moms, but also helps you understand where the birth moms are coming from. And that we're going to have 50,000 in print by the end of the month, which is going to be great. So we're really pleased. That book is done very well also. And it's, again, it's an educational piece. The more you know, the better you'll do. The more money you'll save, the less stress you'll have, and you'll find your way closer to your adoption. So knowledge is really important. And if you want to save time and money, stress, the best thing you can do is educate yourself. And I applaud those on the call tonight because they're doing that. They're learning as much as they can. And you know, you can go in, you can pay an attorney $375 an hour to explain some of the things we're telling you tonight, or you can learn it yourself, and then when you go in there, you ask pinpointed questions that you really need to know specifically about your particular adoption or your situation.
Mm-hmm. Good point. There was something that one of our families shared. She said, one thing I've been feeling bad about is not seeing my nieces. I love them, but it's hard to be around them right now. They were born while we've been waiting to adopt, and I'm concerned my brother and sister are thinking bad about me not seeing their kids. Am I being selfish?
You know what? I understand that part. I think that it can be a difficult time. Again, identifying what it is, and it would be great if you could have a relationship with them. I think what I would do is I start by sending maybe a gift to the children first, so keep with a card to them. You know, just thinking about you, I found these sweet little things that I wanted to send to the children, and we're looking forward to seeing you, and leaving it open-ended at that point, because you're doing something than ignoring them, and you're sharing something. So if you can't physically be with them right now, at least send some gifts to them and a sweet little card. And then really try working toward that, because again, it sounds like possibly you're looking more at the negative part of it than the positive part, like they've got it all together and I don't. And I want to make sure that you're looking at the fullness of joy in your own life, if this is going to happen to you. But if you keep focusing on the negative, and that I don't have what you have not, you will not have. So you've got to focus on what you can do every day towards your adoption, staying positive. Slowly you'll be able to see your children too. And you know, for me, it was very difficult to have my friends come and, you know, push their babies into me and hold them. But then I realized when that is happening that soon I'll have my own child in my arms too. And I had to just keep trusting the Lord with it. And I remember going out, I would go to the mall, and if there was a baby store on one side of the mall, I would walk on the complete opposite side and would not even look over there because I couldn't handle looking at the baby store. So I did that for about a year. And then one day I decided, you know what, I'm going to go into that baby store. I'm going to buy something for my baby. I'm going to bring it home. I had a dresser drawer that I had decided to put, it was in the computer room. And I opened the drawer, and I said a prayer over that and said, Lord, I'm doing my part, and now it's up to you. And close that drawer, and it must have been 3 or 4 months before we heard about our son. And so I sometimes think by doing that and just being positive, and that helped me to get to a point that I could go into the baby stores and do that. But it took me a while, and don't beat yourself up if you're not there right now.
Definitely. Everyone handles things differently, and, you know, it's okay to just do what's going to help you feel better about things. But also, I think here at Lifetime, we are always encouraging families to really think about how they can get outside of their comfort zone. It might hurt a little bit, but maybe in the end, in the long run, you'll be better off for it, because you will have a connection with your nieces after you bring your baby home. you know, and
Right.
when your nieces get older, you can maybe share with them someday,
Yeah.
you know, what you were going through. I know there are a lot of mysteries about my older relatives that I'd like to know about what they were going through when I was a child. So it'd be great for you to have that relationship
Yeah.
with them.
And this is a great
And I think,
question here too. Thank you, Lisa. She says, our nephews are joy in our waiting. We love getting them, and I know my sister-in-law will be a good support system when I do get my baby, and we will need her so much. I couldn't imagine being apart from them. I think sometimes it's also about bracing yourself, like you said earlier, knowing yourself, being honest with yourself, and being able to put yourself out there to be there for them, but then plan something for yourself after so that you're not totally dwelling on, I'm driving home and that was exhausting and when am I going to get my turn? Instead, you have sort of a plan of action of how you're going to recoup
right,
and rebuild
yeah, because I
yourself.
have, yeah, I found an article here that we must have treats, and here's why. I was going to write an article about this. You know, treats are different. They're rewards. They're small pleasures or indulgence that we give to ourselves just because we want to. And also, they energize us. We feel cared for. And we really need to do that. So if you're struggling in one area, make sure you give yourself a treat. Let me go back to one comment I wanted to make regarding the nieces and nephews, too. I think when you are going through that period of time, remember you're in a season right now, and that's not going to always be the same way. But you have to ask yourself, what's the worst that would happen? What's the worst that could happen? Are you afraid you're going to fall apart? What's the worst that could happen if you spent time with your nieces and nephews? And then just think about it and maybe write that down. And as a writer, what you do is when you don't feel like writing, you take a pen in your hand and you take paper and you start writing. And even if I have to write, I don't know what I'm going to write about, I keep doing it. After a while, you start writing the real true feelings that are coming true. So go sometime when you're not interrupted. I go in my car and I sit in the parking lot at the hospital because no one bothers me up there. And that's where I'll do a lot of writing. And now it overlooks our building here, so I can't really go to one particular parking lot. But I go there where nobody will be bothering me, and I just write, and I journal out. Get a good pen that you like, and just write out your feelings. You can always burn it if you don't want to have anybody else see it. But start writing out what that is. But ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen if I went to that baby shower? You know, you may cry like I did. Went in there, I dried my tears, I went out, I was fine. What's the worst that could happen if you spent time with your niece and nephew? You could actually, I think fear keeps us from doing more things than we know. And we think in our mind that something's going to be horrible, when actually by doing it, you realize it wasn't as bad as what we thought it was going to be.
And I like this comment. One of our families said, hanging out with my infant nephew provides great practice, which is such a good point, because how many times have we heard when adoptive parents get to the hospital and the husband goes, wait a second, I don't know what to do. I've never changed a diaper. Like, that's a little bit of a humorous take on it, but that could be really good practice. You know,
I've had
practical application.
I've had to go and I've shared with parents. They've had me call me up and said, we just got these babies. I don't know what to do with them. Can you please come over and show us how to do the bottles and the diapers? And I'm so afraid the social worker is going to find out. And they're frantic, you know, and show them how to birth a baby. And because you don't always get that. Sometimes the hospitals now will show you, but it's something that I think you can get a lot of experience with that. And also, it's nice to have pictures with your nieces and nephews in your profile, because it shows the birth mom that you're not afraid of holding a baby or taking care of a child, and you can do that. Here's also something, a quote from Norman Vincent Peale that I like. The secret of life isn't what happens to you, but what you do with what happens to you. And it's really, if you think about that, the secret of life isn't what happens to you, but what you do with what happens to you. And I think it's really important that we take everything that's happening right now, turn it into something that we try and stretch ourselves. Like you mentioned, we stretch ourselves, and don't be fearful of everything, because if you're fearful of everything, you won't leave the house. None of us would. You know, we've got to stretch, we've got to do this, and no one would adopt. And I meet too many families, too many people, as I mentioned early in the webinar, that were fearful or put off on the back burner till a perfect time to adopt. and they ended up not adopting. So now they're 56 and 57 years old, and they're looking at adoption for the first time, and they're going to be less attractive to a birth mother. I can't imagine at my age right now having a newborn 24/7 in my home. It would be too difficult. Start as early as you possibly can. If you're older, God bless you, get some help to clean the house and do other things, but don't put it off if you really truly want to be a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Good advice.
I think a lot of this we can learn, and we can learn different things from people, and I think too that you're going to have friends that are going to feel the same way, and if you can be around other people that have adopted in the last few years, that helps too.
And that's one of the reasons I love having our adoption stories on our webinars too. And all of these photos, yeah, I know that you pointed out these are all lifetime families. These are all adoptions that have happened. But one of the cool things is that the photos we're showing right now are of families who have shared their stories on our webinars. And so if you need that connection, if you want to hear from people who have been where you are right now, it really helps to connect with other adoption stories and know, oh, wow, I went through that, or gosh, I didn't even think to ask about that yet. I better learn soon. And you can find a lot of those on adoptionteleconference.com. But to me, it's really fun because we've seen a lot of our audience tonight on our previous webinars, and so I'm hoping some people are sort of recognizing these photos saying, oh, I remember that story, or yeah, that one was so helpful, or that kid was so cute, or whatever it is. It's just validation and the comfort and encouragement, but also the practical tips that come out of adoption stories from people who have walked through that recently. Like you just said, Mardie, it's so valuable.
I think so. Hearing the stories, and we all remember things by stories. A lot of my adoptive parents would say very similar. I remember that story. So I'm talking to a birth mom, and all of a sudden, in the back of my mind, I hear your voice, and I hear that story, and it reminds me of this or that. And they said it was very helpful because we remember things, visuals. We remember stories more than anything else. And that's why it's important that we talk to other people. You're absolutely right, too. And I think that just getting the education, coming to the webinars, reading the books, and reading the stories within the books, too, are going to be very helpful to people.
Yes.
And I really hope this has helped a lot of people this evening, and I hope we hear back from the listeners, too. I know you've had some feedback on it, which has been great. I always like to get feedback on the webinar and how it helps you and what your decision is going to be, too. And with the holidays coming up right now, more and more people are looking at, 2016 is coming up, and the recording is going to be probably playing for many years afterward, but the next year is going to be coming up. What are you going to do? What are your goals? What's your vision? What do you want to get out of this next year, and where are you going? And you're the one that really holds the key to that, with God. And once you put that out there, and just like I did with my little baby outfit, is that I'm doing my part, God, now it's up to you. I'm ready for this, and really verbalizing that and going forward.
This has been great.
Thank you, Mardie, for, yes.
Well, you're very
People
welcome.
Are chiming in with their...
Yeah, it's been great to see the questions and review all the great photographs coming up here from the families. This is encouragement. I hope it's encouragement to other families watching this too, that, these people have been where you were before and thinking the same things that you've been thinking about, and now they're parenting.
Yes, absolutely. I always wonder how you feel when you see pictures like this, knowing 30 years have gone by since you've started helping families come together with birth parents to be able to adopt and become mom and dad. I just wonder how that feels, seeing these, knowing that, this all started with your personal journey 30 years ago.
It blesses my heart. I have to tell you, it blesses my heart. And to me, it's many times years ago when I wanted more children, God told me, these are all your babies. So every time there's a baby born and adopted, to me it's another baby that I had, that I adopted, because it's helped me. And I never get tired of it. And it's an honor to be able to be part of these families, and I hope the families listening today that will be part of their, their building of their family for a lifetime too, because it's crucial, and it's my life's journey to help other people. And but it does bless my heart to see these different ones and realize out of my pain came this awesome organization, this opportunity to help other people. You know, it turned lemon into lemonade and became, you know, we're one of the largest adoption organizations in the United States and helping so many families. And because of that pain, if I had ignored it or said, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to move to that, I'm just going to be childless, I'm not going to listen with my heart and my intuition and not listen to God, this wouldn't have happened, and these children would have not been in these homes. So think of that in your own life right now. On when you say yes, you have no idea the generations you're going to bring together. Your child will be your generations after generation. And the other day we went to, I know we're getting ready to close, we went to a grandparents' day at one of the schools, and they'd asked a lady in the audience how many grandchildren she had, and great-grandchildren. She had 112 grandchildren and great-grandchildren, generation after generation, all these kids in there that I couldn't believe. But I thought, and she was a faithful grandmother, and her children had children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and yours will too. You can't give up. And that's the one thing that I want to be able to get across tonight is do not give up. Move forward, one foot in front of the other, have faith, trust God, and go forward.
Thank you, Mardie.
Thank you, ladies. Thanks so much, and thanks to everybody for attending tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. And if you have questions, want to know what the next steps are in your journey, reach out to us. You can call 1-800-923-6784, and we are happy to answer your adoption questions and understand what you've gone through and where you hope to go next in your journey to become mom and dad. You can also email adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. Now, if you are filling out our application online, it is at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. We will be able to receive that first thing in the morning, start processing it, and have a response or some feedback for you within 1 to 5 business days. It's perfectly fine to fill out the application. If you're not quite sure what direction you're taking, we can hopefully be a good support to you in that and answer questions and help share that burden with you and provide information and resources to help you with finding the right path to becoming mom and dad. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on a future webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll talk with you soon.